Hi, this is Todd Baginski. Thanks for watching the video. I think you're going to like this fun video today. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to add a button to a Power App that when you click the button, it will allow you to copy text either from a text box or another location within the Power App as well to the clipboard. So you can immediately go somewhere else and hit Control V or Command V or right click, Edit V, whatever the case may be, and paste the values somewhere else. This is very common functionality you may have used in other websites like the Microsoft Azure portal, for instance. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do that inside of a Power App. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing, I think a picture is worth a million words. So let's just start off and show you how it works, and then I'll show you how I built it. So the first thing I'm going to do is highlight this text in Notepad that says, let's start with this. And I'm going to edit and copy. And then I'm just going to press the delete key and delete it. Okay, so here's my Power App where I'm going to demonstrate what we are going to do to put something on the clipboard. And we know right now on the clipboard that if I pick paste, let's start with this is on the clipboard. So I can hit Control V like that. As you can see, that's what's on my clipboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into this Power App, and in my Power App here, I have my component I've created with my button that allows me to copy the value of whatever I type in this text box to the clipboard. And also, the Power App itself is going to display whatever value I have in the component here within the Power App. And that's going to demonstrate how by adding this component to the Power App, I can still get a hold of the value within the component and use it other places in the Power App too. So here we go. Let's go ahead and type in a great message. Okay, so that's something new. I do not have that on the clipboard. If I come over back here and I paste again, I can show you, let's start with this is still on the clipboard. So nothing has changed as far as my clipboard, but you notice that my Power App now says the value in the component's text box is a great message. And that happened when I left the text box. So when I left the focus of the text box, this component is updating the value, and then the Power App itself is displaying that value right here at the top. So if I go and I modify the value again and I put like 1, 2, 3 in here, notice the value hasn't changed yet, but watch, as soon as I click somewhere else, I clicked on the white spot of the canvas there, and now that new property value within my component was broadcast back out to the Power App, and we can use it and see it here. Now, nothing is still copied to my clipboard. Again, I'll delete here and again show you edit, paste. Let's start with this still on the clipboard. So now I'll delete that, and now I'm going to come back to the Power App and I'm going to click this copy button. Just clicked it. You probably saw that on the video. So here we come back to Notepad, edit, paste. There's what I just copied by clicking the copy button. I can change this message in here like that and come out. You can see that event again fires. Let's go paste. Nope, I still have the last message on the clipboard, but now we'll go click copy again. Back over to Notepad and edit and paste. So now you can see I have a better message there. So this is how you can create a very cool functionality to allow you to quickly get values out of the Power App. An important thing to point out here, you'll notice I'm not running this in the Power Apps editor. I wanted to test that to ensure that this works outside of the Power Apps editor, and indeed it does, as you can see here. So now let's give this a little bit more of a deep dive, and you can see how I built this here and why I chose to build it as a component. And I will show you where you can get all the source code and plug this into your own Power App very easily as well. So now let's take a look at this actual Power App behind the scenes here and just start as we visualize what's in the Power App before we get into the component that actually copies to the clipboard. So here you can see in my Power App, I have right here, if we go to the screens, I have a label, and this label just says value and component text box. I have another label. And this one has its text property set to this big long string right here, dot value. And what is that? Well, this big long string right here is a custom PCF Power Apps component I created with TypeScript. And then I imported that into my Power App. And so when I drop it on the page, this is the big long name for that component right there. And then the dot value is basically saying, I want the property named value. Give me its value right now. And so the way that this works is that here is the component itself, as you can see. I've added that too. And if I look at the properties over here for the component, you can see that right now its value is set to nothing by default. And there's a tooltip about the component. But this value property right here is the property that is actually bound up right here. So anytime I change the component like this and I change the text inside of this guy, ABC 1, 2, 3, and I leave it, the reason that the UI changed and displayed it up here is because the UI is bound to the value property for that whole component. You can see here the underlined text in the formula bar equates to the component with the green rectangle around it right there. So that's how this is wired up from a Power Apps point of view on what's inside the Power App itself. Now, so what I do to build this component, you're probably wondering next. So let's take a look at that. To build my component, I actually put together some documentation. So you could either watch my video to see how I built this thing, or you could actually look at the steps and learn a little bit about it, because I'm going to put this on GitHub as soon as I finish up this video and publish the video. So the way it works really under the hood is there's this library right here called Copy to Clipboard that I found in NPM. And it's a very, very easy to use library, as you will see. If we want to take a look at that library, you can see right here, tells you all about it. So you can go look more about it. One thing that I really like about it is it's got fallback to IE specific interfaces. And so when you look at the compatibility on this thing, I found it in another page document. It might have been one of these documents over here, but basically your fallback on supporting tons of different web browsers is excellent. And there's also additional things you can do for debugging and messaging in the format. The example I'm showing here is just plain text, but it will also allow you to copy HTML text as well. So you can do plain text like in my example, or HTML with this library. Oh yeah, here's the browser support. It's got a ton of great browser support here. So I liked the look of all that and decided to use this to build this control. So if we come back, how did I actually do that? Well, the first thing I did is I went to this web page and it tells you how to install the Power Apps CLI. After you do that, you open up a PowerShell prompt and you can run this command to update those CLI tools. Then I make a new directory for my component. I change to that directory. Then I use this Power Apps CLI command to actually create an empty project for my component. And that is everything you see underneath this folder and below that I have open that it created for me when I ran that command. Then I install the NPM packages, build it, and start it up. And I'll show you what this looks like right now. When I start the command npm start, what it's going to do is it's going to start up a test environment and it's going to drop that into a web browser on my system, right like that. And so here is that component running. You can see I have the text box and I have my copy button. And here's where I talked about that property. The property's name is value and there's an input for it. It's blank to start. If I go give it a value here, like this, You'll notice the value hasn't changed yet, but as soon as I leave focus, the value propagates to an input value, and it's also my output value. And that allows me to pass things into it or get it back out of my component so I can use it other places. I can also click the copy button right here, and migrate message will now be sitting on my clipboard. We can see last time I had a better message on the clipboard, but this time edit, paste. There you go. So it's really nice because I was able to validate it worked right here inside of this control sandbox. So that's what I did next. After I did that step, I stopped debugging it, and then I ran npmi -save copy to clipboard, and this basically installs that package into this particular project. After I did that, I went to the index.ts file and I imported that particular package. Then later in my index file, I called the copy function that came from that package, and I pass in this value and make sure it's a string. And that value here equates to that property I named value that you saw me in the toolbox passing in and out. When I was done doing that and making other modifications to the code to round out my sample and put the controls and event handling in there, I saved all the files, built it again, started it up again in the test environment, and made sure the copy and pasting worked. When it did, Control C, just like I'll show you here, and then terminate batch job, yes, enter. And now you are no longer running it in that toolbox environment. I made a new directory to create a solution to package this in so I could roll it out into my Power App environment and put it into a Power App. So here is that directory right here. I changed to that directory. Then within that directory, I run this command, PAC solution init, publisher name. It's got my name, publisher prefix. It's got an abbreviation for my name. What that did is it actually scaffolded out some of the things in this directory. Then, after I did that, I said PAC solution and I add reference, and I add the reference to that component that I created when I created that project initially. When you add the reference to it, then what you're going to do is you're going to run msbuild/t:/restore, and that's going to go download all the different NuGet packages and restore them. Finally, you can compile it, bundle it, and then under the hood, use the solution packager exe file to create the solution zip file with one simple msbuild command right there. After you've done that, that gives you your zip file. So then you basically take your zip file, go to your Power Apps environment, browse to solutions and import. Walk through the little wizard and import your solution, and here's mine. And so if I click on that and look inside of it, you can see here's my custom control. There's that PCF copy text component that I created. After I've got that done, the next thing I need to do is I need to enable Canvas Power Apps components. And so here's what that process looks like. You essentially go into the Power Apps Admin Center. And once you get there, you pick the Products tab and select Features, and you turn this guy on. Power Apps Component Framework for Canvas Apps. Then you go and you create a new Power App. And you go to the settings for your individual Power App and you turn on the Components Experimental feature. After that, then you can implement this any way you want. You can put it into a Canvas Power App, like I'll show you here in just a second, or you can put it in a model-driven Power App. And the instructions to do that are right here. And so I'll show you how I put it into my Canvas Power App here in the editor. After it was in the solution gallery, I went to Components. I picked Import right here. And once you enable those two things that I showed you, this Code tab will light up. You pick that, and here is the component that you've uploaded. And when you hit Import, what will happen is that back over in the Insert tab, this Code Components section will pop up, and it will have your component. And now you can drag that component right onto the design surface and it's ready to go. And so if we hit play, I haven't tried 2 on the same page yet, but let's give it a shot. This is my second one. So I'll hit copy and let's see if it actually works well or not. And edit, paste, second one. Look at that. So that by design, that was my goal all along. How can I make this so I can easily drop this on my page over and over and over and reuse it so that I can quickly copy whatever I want to get out of my Power App with that type of functionality. And now we've seen it works. So that's really nice to see that worked out well. And so if I wanted to get a hold of the value for this, here's the name of this control. Maybe I could give it an easier name. How about like second component? And so now this one's called second component. And if I want to insert another label on my screen here, I can set this one equal to second component dot value. And we should see that all light up perfectly, and boom, there it is. So that's a lot better name than the name this component had when I dragged it in out of the box, right? And it looks a lot better than referencing it like that too. So as you can see, this pattern works really well and it's really easy to do. And now let's go take a look at the code that actually implements this pattern. This is the funny part. The code to do all this is actually really, really simple. So the first thing that I did was I ran that command to add that npm package, right, to this project. And by doing so, that adds this project dependency right here. The next thing is that in my index.ts file, this is the one that command line generated for me as part of the project. I'm going to import statement here so I can use copy. Now, the rest of this stuff here, you could build this out any way you want. But inside of the class definition, you can see I have variables here for first, there's value. There's my internal property and it's of type string, where I'm going to store what's in the text box in this case and what I'm going to put onto the clipboard and what I'm also going to allow to be passed out of the component so we can use it somewhere else in the Power App. You've got to have notify output change so you can use this delegate function. You'll see that used in a second. I have a label control for the input. That's the text box, and a button. This is the one that copies stuff. I also have a container, which I'm going to make a div and put these other controls inside of it. Inside of init, basically right here, what I'm doing is I'm setting up that label control. I'm calling it input. I'm setting an attribute of type on it to be label. I put on input blur here, which is a fun event listener you can see there. Then here's where the button gets added to the DOM. I'm setting its inner HTML, and over here I'm demonstrating how to use a resources file. So this is coming from PCF copy text component button label right here. If I highlight this and go to the resource file that I've created right here, and I search for that string, here we can find it. So basically you can see in this resource file, this is used for localization purposes. That's how I got the word copy. You don't have to do that though. You could just, put equal quote copy right here. This is just demonstrating a pattern for localization. The next one is adding the button. It's class list. This class list is coming from a CSS file, which is stored right here. And so here is my class that defines what that button looks like and what color it is. And if it goes to an error state, what the different CSS class would be for that. Here, I am binding up my event listener when you click on the button. And this is really where the next code related to the library is going to go inside that event listener. The rest of this stuff is just wiring stuff up in the DOM and wrapping a div around these two controls. Here's the button click. This is really what happens where the important things happen. Notify output change first fires. And notify output change is that delegate control or method that I registered right before here as well. And that guy's job is basically to broadcast the methods into the component output framework so that all of the properties, when you change them inside or outside of the control, those states are updated everywhere accordingly. Then really copy here. This is what actually drops it on the clipboard. And here you can see I'm taking this value, that one that we put up at the very top, and I'm putting that onto the clipboard. We can have on input blur here. I originally grabbed this pattern from one of the sample Power Apps PCF controls. That is the increment counter one, and they were using a pattern where they used a number instead of a text value they were passing in and out, and that's why I simplified this code right here. Finally, update view, again, is responsible for more of broadcasting those parameters as they come in and out and updating them in the control state and in the view properly. As you can see, this dot value is ultimately set by the context associated with the component framework here, grabbing the parameters values raw value. And so that's what that is all doing to get that in and out of the control. Finally, if you take a look at the types class right here in the inputs and the outputs, you can see I've defined the input parameter to be value of type string, and the same thing for the output. Finally, you will need to marry up that property with where you define it in your manifest right here. And here you can see the name. These display key and description, these also come from the localized resx file. Of note, this is of the type single line.text that I'm using to support this. I'm saying it is a bound parameter, it is required, and you can see I'm assigning a default value of just a space or nothing there. So that is how I developed this particular Power Apps PCF control, so you can copy and paste values straight out of a Power App with the click of a button. I hope it comes in handy for you, and please let me know what you think about it in the comments, and if you got an idea for another video, I'd love to hear it. I work with folks all the time who I meet on YouTube. In fact, I just talked to one yesterday. If you'd like to work on a project together on Power Apps, let me know. Hit me up over at canvas.com. I hope you're having a good one. I'll see you next time.